Good morning, First Baptist. How are you guys doing today? Excellent. You guys can have a seat if you're still standing. I think most of you figured it out. If you are a parent to children and you'd like to send them out of the room, this is your opportunity as well. They'll be heading to the back. It's one of my favorite weeks of the month when we have Worship Together weekend, and in part because one of our core values here at First Baptist is what we call a next generation commitment. And here's the idea behind it. And we actually have a statement. It says, our greatest legacy will not be in what we build today, but what we hand to our children's children. We'll do anything short of sin to see the next generation follow Jesus. Many of you don't know this, but our church is actually going to turn 156 years old this June. Yeah. It's amazing. I forget what kind of birthday that is, if you get cotton or if you get diamonds, or I don't remember what it is, but it's a pretty big one. But one of the things that really inspired me when I was praying about whether or not God was leading me to First Baptist was this whole idea of, man, how cool would it be if in the year 2069 the church is celebrating its 200th anniversary? Right? How incredible of a legacy and a testimony would that be to God's goodness that a church that started before the railroads even got to San Diego would still be going and thriving in the year 2069. But in order for that to be true, a church cannot be so focused on the current generation that it neglects the next one and the one after that. In fact, the writer of the book of Proverbs writes this in Proverbs 13:22. He says that good people, they leave an inheritance to their grandchildren. There is a huge mindset difference between leaving an inheritance one generation, two generations, and three generations. Because if it's all about the first generation, then that means I can spend everything that I've got, and if it's gone when I die, who cares? Two-generation thinking says, you know what? I'm just going to have a big nest egg, and I'm going to just hand it to my children, and whatever they do with it is fine. And we see those stories on television, and we read about them in books, and it usually does not go well. But three-generation thinking, it's not just about accumulation and exploitation, it's about developing character. And it's about creating the patterns and the rhythms that says it's not just about us, it's about who's coming next. We just finished Christmas, and the people who love Christmas the most, you think are the kids, but it's not the kids. It's certainly not the parents. It's the grandparents, right? And the reason why is that the grandparents are watching the joy on their faces. They're watching the joy on their kids and their grandkids' faces. But you know who gets the least amount of presents on Christmas? Grandma and grandpa. But they've learned something that Jesus taught in Acts 20:35, that it is better to give than it is to receive. And so we're going to be a church that's committed to the idea of we're going to reach the next generation. The reason why we have kids in the service on the very first Sunday of the month is because we don't want big church to be some abstract idea that when they get out of high school, they say, well, that's not for me anymore. That was for my parents. We want them to feel connection. And it's also one of the reasons why we support missionaries and organizations like the Navigators and Stephen Holechek. And so would you give it up for Stephen this morning? He is our Navigators missionary. And those who are clapping, they know what Navigators are. And a few of you are like, I'm clapping, but I don't know what it is. And so, Stephen, why don't you just tell us, what are the Navigators? What's your role with them? And what do you focus on with these students?
Yeah, that's great. So the Navigators is a worldwide organization. It's a Christian organization that's really sending missionaries around the world. We have a vision of advancing the gospel of Jesus and his kingdom into the nations through spiritual generations, like you were talking about, who live and disciple among the lost. And so the Navigators are all around the world taking the gospel to new places. And here in the U.S., we have a couple different ministry focuses. And one of the big ones, the biggest one actually, is to college students. So my wife Tess is over there. Yep. And we have been ministering in San Diego for the last 17 years with the Navigators to college students, specifically to UCSD. And that has expanded over the years beyond UCSD. And so really, we go to campus trying to reach students who don't know Jesus, help students who do know Jesus. We want to see them develop a radically deep walk with Jesus during their time in college, equipping them to not only walk with Jesus for a lifetime, but be able to minister and make disciples wherever they go.
I love that. And so today what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually interview Stephen here up on stage. We've been supporting him for several years, and God has positioned us right in the backyard of UCSD. So this is kind of the perfect person to bring onto the stage and explain to us like where our money's going, as well as like why this is so crucial. And so why is it so crucial to have a ministry for college students, and like what makes this age group unique?
Yeah. So I personally think the college campus is the most unique reaching ground and sending ground in the world. God has used, in fact, Jesus' ministry is pretty reflective in college ministry. Most of the disciples that were following Jesus at the time that he was training up to take on his mission were in that range of 15 to 21 years old. And so there's a unique season that happens with college campuses. So one, students are in a unique season of their life. They're leaving their parents' home. It's kind of, they're no longer kids, but they're not full adults yet, right? And I hate saying that to college students, but it's true. They are still in school, but they're out from their parents' wings for the first time. The college campus is unique because it gathers 30 to 40,000 people in one place, and then in 4 years, they scatter. They go all over the place. And so the season of life provides a unique opportunity to really reach a lot of students at the most pivotal time in their life. College is that season where students are trying to figure out, who really am I? Who am I going to be the rest of my life? What will I believe? Who are my people? And what am I going to give my life to? And it's probably the last big season of everyone's life where they make those critical decisions. A statistic is that 90% of students who haven't started a faith relationship with Jesus by the time they leave college ever will. So the cement, the soil becomes very hard after college. Which I'm sure all of us experience as we try to reach our friends in our neighborhoods and work. It's just a longer process. And yet in college, it's the harvest is just plentiful, but it's also very ripe. And so we just long to be there right where God is at work and students are very open.
I love that. So obviously there's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of benefits to going to the college campuses and having ministry there, but of course that comes with some challenges too. So like, what are some challenges that aren't just part of college ministry, but maybe unique to the current generation of 18 to 22-year-olds that you encounter?
Absolutely. The campus comes with a lot of challenges and a lot of great opportunities. So in general, college students, when they come into campus, they really are, I think of Matthew 9, it says Jesus went through all the villages and synagogues teaching, preaching, and healing, and when he looked out on the masses, he was moved to his gut with compassion because they're harassed and helpless, like sheep without shepherds. And I don't know a better description for college students, for freshmen in their first week on campus. When parents leave, the first question a freshman asks is like, who am I going to eat dinner with tonight? They're lonely. They are realizing, I thought I knew about life in high school, but now I don't. And so they really need a shepherd, and they need the ultimate shepherd in Jesus. So there's unique opportunity there. The challenges already are, the environment of the college campus is not, at the public schools, it's not super pro-Jesus. And so you have a lot of culture and voices speaking against believing not only in God, but really following Jesus. So that's a challenge in itself. And then this generation, I think Gen Z, we've seen, Gen Z has a lot of challenges. So Gen Z is struggling with high mental health, suicide ideation. There's been declared a public health crisis for Gen Z because suicide ideation, mental health, anxiety is at its peak that it's ever been for a generation. This generation is really the first generation that has grown up. When we were growing up, we would all ask the question, who am I? And you had parents and churches and teachers and the society kind of helping you figure out what it means to be you in your family and in this neighborhood, in this community. Gen Z is probably the first generation that's been told, look inside yourself and you decide. So parents are saying, you kind of have all autonomy to figure out who you want to be. Schools are saying, hey, you can be whatever you want to be, whoever you want to be. And so what it's caused is Gen Z is full of people who are really struggling to figure out who they are. Because I know when I look inside myself alone to figure out who I am, I don't come up with great answers. So it leads to a lot of experimentation, fluidity, just trying to grasp onto so many different things. So it's a huge obstacle for Gen Z. The other one is Gen Z is impassioned to I would say, change the world, flip everything on its head, right? They want to tear down the systems because they see a lot of the hypocrisy, they've just been kind of handed a bill of goods. That's not great, but they don't really know how to do that. And so Gen Z has a lot of desire for purpose and a lot of desire to know who they are, and yet they aren't getting a whole lot of help in figuring that out. And so we want to come alongside college students, and when they meet Jesus, Jesus answers those questions for them. He tells them who they are in him. He gives them a purpose of, I can use you to help change the world for my kingdom, for my purposes, in a way that's actually going to bring life and not just death and not just chaos. So those are some, with Gen Z, those are some really unique things. And we have a lot of compassion for Gen Z because they haven't been given a lot of help and they've been left kind of just to figure it out on their own.
I'm glad people like you are saying, hey, I want to spend my life working with this age group and kind of diving into some of those deeper questions. But I just want to know, it doesn't sound easy. So, what motivated, you and Tess to say, this is what we want to do with our life? This is how we want to spend our days?
Well, for me personally, my story is in college. I came into college as from a Christian home, coming into college in Colorado Springs. But really, I came in with a lot of shame, a lot of hiddenness. I didn't really fully understand grace or the gospel. I kind of thought God loves me when I'm performing right, but I'm not so sure what God thinks of me when I'm sinning or all those things. And so it was really in college that two things really happened for me. One, I came to understand really the gospel of grace, that Jesus has done it all for me. And so in that exchange, I have received all of Christ's righteousness, and he's taken on all of my sin. And the second, the second was really deciding Jesus is trustworthy. And so I just said, Lord, my life is yours. I kind of hit a rock bottom my freshman year of college, and I said, God, I can't do it. My whole life is yours. Do whatever you want with my life. Wherever you want me to go, I'll go. Whatever you want me to do with my life, I'll do that, but I just want you to take it. And that really unleashed a huge kind of vision for my life of just whatever I did, I wanted to go reach students. And so I knew that college had been a critical time where some really key people came into my life, helped me walk with Jesus, helped me understand who Jesus actually was, who I was in him, and gave me this vision of I can give my life away to people, investing in individuals who would go and invest in other individuals just like Jesus did. And that was such a huge thing for me that once I understood grace, I was like, everyone needs to know this. And then college is just fun. And so, when I graduated college at 22, I thought, man, if I have an opportunity to go back to the college campus and help other students with this in an environment that's just so full of energy and dynamic, why wouldn't I do that, at least for a couple of years? And ever since then, it's kind of, Tess and I just said, Lord, you have us on this path. We'll just trust you to pull us off of it if you have something different. And we've just continued to do it for the last 17 years. And one challenge is just getting older. I feel more and more my age when I meet an 18-year-old at UCSD or at any other campus. You just start to feel it. But the Lord continues to make it clear students need to be loved. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you genuinely love them and give them their life, students respond to that. So, yeah.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how do you engage college students? What's the day-to-day look like? What are you focusing on? How does ministry look for the Navigators and at UCSD?
Yeah, that's great. So how we engage students is kind of all open, but really it starts at something called Fall Launch. So every year we know that thousands and thousands and thousands of freshmen are going to come to these college campuses for the first time, and they're really, we call them like wet cement the first week. If we can kind of write Jesus' name or our name or the Navigator's name in that wet cement the first week, we have a relationship with them. And so we kind of go all out to meet as many students as possible in the first week of school. So something we've done at UCSD, we continue to do every year, is we raise money, we buy t-shirts that just have the Navigator logo or just something on them, but they look nice. And we give away 1,000 free shirts on campus, and we say, hey, we're giving away 1,000 free t-shirts on campus if you have time to listen to a 5-minute illustration on the main theme of the Bible. And so they say yes, and we use Romans 6:23, one verse to kind of explain the gospel. And so we use the bridge to life illustration. Our sin has separated us from God, but God is wanting to restore that relationship through Christ. And so we share the gospel 1,000 times in the first 3 days on campus. Because the 1,000 shirts are gone in 3 days. We mobilize our student leaders, 30 or 40 student leaders to share the gospel in that way. And it's incredible. You hear often today like, oh, only kind of like relational evangelism is the only thing that'll work today. Initiative evangelism it doesn't work today. And the Lord has challenged me of Stephen, in John 4, Jesus says to his disciples, look up, the harvest is ready now. And so we have seen students come to faith right there in the first 3 days of school. 2 years ago, so two quick stories. 2 years ago, our student leaders that were coming in for the new year, we kind of do something called an Ephesians 3:20. If God could do anything next year with our non-believing friends, what would we want him to do? Kind of if he's capable to do beyond what we could ask or imagine. And so that 1 year, our student leaders just really felt the Lord saying, hey, what if you trust me for 100 new commitments to Jesus next year? And so we just started praying all summer long, and then we did the 1,000 t-shirts. And we've just been praying and praying and praying. We actually did the training here in this room for how to do the bridge illustration, how to follow someone up, what if they say yes. And we saw 46 students in the first 2 days give their life to Jesus. And so we are seeing students, something about Gen Z, since COVID, this is probably the most responsive generation to the gospel. I know Gen Z has a lot of issues. I know the headlines, but they're the most open and the most responsive to the gospel that I've seen in 17 years. A second story, on how the harvest is ready now, and we want to be right there sharing the gospel. We were doing the t-shirts probably about 6 years ago, and a gal from Japan, an international student, she'd been in America for 2 days. Her name is Honami. She was walking by. She spoke a little bit of English, and she came by our tent on campus, and Kim walked up there and said, hey, would you like a t-shirt? We're sharing this illustration. And she said, oh, okay. And Honami heard the gospel for the very first time. She'd never heard the name of Jesus. She's like, I've never heard of Jesus. So Kim explained the gospel and then said, sorry if I get weepy, but explained the gospel and said, would you like to receive Christ? Would you like this eternal relationship with God? And explained all the elements of the gospel. And she said, yes, I do. And sometimes, you have someone kind of respond right there. And it's like, okay. And it was a genuine acceptance of Christ, and that whole year, she's only at UCSD for a year. Kim got to disciple her all year long. Honami started bringing her Japanese international friends to the Navigators, and she went back to Japan, got connected with a church and with the Navigators out there who helped continue to develop her and train her in investing in others and walking with Jesus. And so it's just amazing to see what happens, and it can happen like that, where students are just, some of them are just waiting and ready and open, and they are desperate for Jesus and desperate for grace. So that's one thing is fall launch. Yep.
Yeah, I love hearing those kinds of stories, and I'm so excited that we get to be a part of something like that.
Absolutely.
And I know that as you and I have had conversations, outside of this room, we've talked about just your vision and the Navigators' vision for like a presence on different campuses throughout Southern California, because you've been primarily UCSD, but why don't you explain a little bit about just where Navigators is going within the region?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been based at UCSD for our whole time here, and then I'm also serving now regionally. So one of my roles is the Associate Regional Director for what we call the Sunland, which is Hawaii, California, and Arizona. So right now we're on 10 campuses there. So I supervise all of our different campus directors on those 10 campuses, helping them continue to be fruitful and see God work on those campuses. Our prayer, we've been praying to expand to 5 new campuses in the next 2 or 3 years. We recently just opened Cal State San Marcos here in San Diego 2 years ago. Last year was its first year with staff on the ground. And they have about 20 students involved this year, which is really exciting. So after fall launch, we have Bible studies, and really a lot of what we do is we do a lot of one-on-one discipleship, helping people walk with Jesus and learning how to invest in someone else as well. So spiritual generations, kind of getting to see a freshman walk with Jesus, and then by the time they're a junior, investing in another freshman and helping that freshman know and walk with Jesus is really exciting. We have actually handed UCSD to a new director, and so one of my roles this year is coaching him, and part of that is because my wife and I, we want to make the most of every opportunity. We live 8 minutes from San Diego State, and so we've actually been talking as a region of having John learn to direct UCSD, and so part of my role is coaching him this year, and we're going to hopefully pioneer San Diego State in the fall, which is pretty exciting. So yeah, if you know of any students who want to get involved, you just let me know. So we're pretty excited about that, is to see these 3 different campuses in San Diego. And then UCLA just opened this year. Sac State, we have a pioneering work there, and Cal State San Bernardino. So those are works that are just starting this year, which would be about 13 or 14 campuses. But we not only long to be on campuses, but we see the campus as a strategic sending ground as well. We long to see students go into all vocations and contexts of life as disciple makers. And so seeing them go as engineers or as teachers or as doctors, but then some of them we're seeing with this generation saying, I want to go. I want to go overseas. I want to go as a missionary. I want to go as an engineer overseas. I want to go as a teacher overseas, and I want to take the gospel to a new place. So that's the second part of our vision, is really seeing these campuses bless the nations.
Stephen, you shared some already, but I'd love to hear some more stories of just students' lives who have been changed through the gospel, through Navigators. Take it away.
Yeah, I'll share a few, and then I actually invited a former student to come share as well. So we'll have her come up in a minute. Here's a quick story of a guy named James. James was a sophomore. His roommate was just trying to get free food, the first week of school, free food. So he invited James to come to, we used to have an event called the Freshman Christian Connection. And free pizza, root beer kegs, the college stuff. And so James came to this event, and one of our student leaders, Sam, went up and talked to James. And James was a staunch atheist. He just knew all these people are just kind of ridiculous, but I'm here for the free pizza. And so Sam started talking to him, and Sam was a pre-med student, and so it just was really kind and loving to James. And James was like, he got this idea, I'm going to get this guy out of this cult. I'm going to pull him out of this cult, and I'm going to bring him out of faith into atheism. And so Sam was like, hey, would you ever want to get together and talk about these things? And James was like, yeah, I would. That'd be great. And so they start meeting every week, probably a couple times every week. And James would kind of start to bring his things, and Sam would just try to answer his questions as best he can. And Sam kind of challenged him. He said, hey, have you ever actually read the Bible or looked at the claims of Christ? And he said, no, I haven't. He said, but I will. And so he started reading the gospel. and so James, over his first quarter, meeting with Sam trying to answer his apologetic questions as much as possible and scientific questions, and James started to have legitimate questions. He started to they became not just smoke screens, but really questions. And so James read through the whole New Testament in the first quarter, and he's like, well, I'm going to read through the entire Bible and find every discrepancy and show Sam. He read through the whole Bible, and from his relationship with Sam and reading the Bible, James came to the conclusion, I can't, this is true. This is real. And he gave his life to Jesus. What's really cool, we baptized James right here in this baptismal. We needed a place, and so we called the people at the time, and they opened up the place. And so he had all his non-believing friends here. We had a bunch of Nav people here, and I wish I would have recorded it. He shared his testimony for about 10 minutes, and it was just incredible. And so here's a guy who came in, there is no God as a sophomore wanting to change this guy, got into the Word, was accompanied with someone who really loved him and was patient with him, praying for him, and he gave his life to the Lord. James is a brilliant guy. He went to seminary just so he could be equipped as an engineer. He's a bio-engineer, med something. UCSD people are all brilliant. And he's one of the biggest voices online as well, answering apologetic questions on, Quora or, all these different websites where people ask these questions. And so it's just incredible. And so this guy lives in San Diego. He's ministering to his coworkers, and yet he's excellent at what he does. He's brilliant because Sam, a normal, ordinary guy, decided, hey, I'm going to love this guy, and I'm going to sit in it with him. So that's a story. Right now, there's a guy, Brooks. Brooks came in as a freshman 4 years ago, right after COVID. Came from a Jewish family. I started meeting with Brooks. Brooks gave his life to the Lord at one of our fall conferences his first year. And Brooks has just gotten this vision of, I want to invest in the lives of men. So over the last 2 years, he's been investing in a guy named Parker and some of the other guys at UCSD. And now he's engaged, and he and his fiancée are trying to consider, Lord, where do you want us? She really wants to go on into ministry with the Navigators. I'm trying to get him to join her, so we'll see. But it just watching God at work has been really, really exciting. Yeah, can I invite Val up?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so I want to invite, I just asked Valerie Gonzalez, she's one of our former students at UCSD, to just share her own story. we're not only seeing God work in individuals' lives in the college campus, but seeing it change relationships and families and all that. And Val has just been a dear friend of ours, and so wanted to. And Val has actually, she's interning with the Navigators right now. So yeah, Val, you want to just share your story a little bit?
Yeah, everyone can hear me. Is that sweet? Okay, thanks so much, Stephen. Hello, good morning. I'm Valerie, as Stephen said. I'm currently on staff at UC San Diego, my second year there. And yeah, oh my goodness, I'm already gonna cry. Man, okay. Okay, yeah, I will be great and be able to speak fluently. Thanks, Lord. Yes, I also attended UC San Diego as a student. I started there in fall of 2019 as a molecular and cell biology major. I am like the oldest in my family. I was like the first to go to college. And I've always just been like very like hardworking. Like I'm like, if I'm here, I'm gonna like do everything and I'm gonna do it really well. And that's what I did. I like all through high school took like all AP classes, did like 2 sports at a time, was like president of different orgs, and I was like, I will be well-rounded. I'm getting into college for sure. Like no one knows like who is coming, you know? And then applied to colleges and got into UCSD. I actually, when I was like 6 years old, I would tell my parents like, I'm going to UC San Diego so I can live in San Diego. And they were like, how'd you learn about that? You're 6. But we just come here for like summers, and I think I saw like a billboard, and I was like, that's where I'm going. And so I finally got in. And so, yeah, for more context on like my faith, I grew up in a Mormon household. And so a lot of my beliefs and even the ways that I saw the Lord was just through like the Mormon lens. So for anyone who doesn't really know what that would entail, it's a lot of like work really hard and then like God will be pleased, essentially. And so I was like, okay, great. School is telling me like work really hard and you'll get into college. And then my church is telling me like work really hard and God will love you and you'll be successful. And so I was like, hey, I wonder what I should do. Work really hard. And so that's what I did. So I came into college kind of just like feeling the weight of like, man, like this is all I've ever wanted and I'm finally here. Like I really hope I don't screw this up. And so, yeah, I'm like walking on campus, and it was maybe like the second day on campus, if that. And everyone's like flyering, like not only do the Navs want freshmen, but man, every org on campus is like determined to recruit. And so I see this like tent, and they were giving out free t-shirts. And I was like, hey, a free shirt, that'd be nice. And so I kind of like walk up to them, they're like, yeah, for a quick 5-minute illustration of the main theme of the Bible, we'll give you a shirt. And I was like, I mean, I like love God. I'm like Mormon, and Mormonism is a branch of Christianity, so like, you know, this doesn't feel wrong. I was like, okay, sure. So like, hear the gospel. And I was like, yeah, I believe this too. Like, this is great. So like, cool, like come to our Bible studies, come to our Nav nights, which are our large group events, like get involved. And so I was like, okay, great. And so I just started coming around and like pretty quickly realized, I was like, man, like they actually believe something pretty different than like I believe. They were like, oh yeah, like God fully knows you, he fully loves you, and there's nothing that you need to do for that. Like, that's it. Like, he just loves you without your performance or without you being good or even like pleasant. Yeah, like he just does. And I remember being like, oh my goodness, I need to leave. I was like, God, like these people are lying to me. I like don't want to get further away from you by coming to this like organization, and they're lying to me. And so, yeah, I just like started praying, and I was just like scared kind of. But at the same time, I was like, but I don't know, like this group just felt different. I was like, they're just like very loving and like warm, and I just don't really understand it. And so instead, I joined a Bible study because I was like, I need to figure out why these people are weird. And then, yeah, as I like spent time in the Word, even like looking at like in Ephesians, like for it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourselves, so that no one may boast. And And so, yeah, and it even says, like, not by works, but, like, by the Lord and by grace and God. So, yeah, I think it was, like, maybe the end of my freshman year, like, fall quarter, winter quarter, where I was like, God, like, I think that this is, like, true. And I'm, like, scared because then it was like, God, who have I been praying to, like, my whole life? Like, who have I been, like, talking to and engaging with? Like, or even, like, I'm praying right now, like, who's on the other end of this? Like, yeah, just, like, lots of scary questions that I never really considered. But I think I was like, I'm just going to try this. And if this is wrong, like, just, like, make it really clear. And yeah, I mean, 6 years now almost? And it's been constantly like, yes, like, it's only through grace. And, like, by God's grace that we are saved. And so that's just, like, changed everything about my life. It's given me so much peace in just, like, school and relationships. And, like, in my salvation, like, questioning if you're saved every day is awful. It's so scary. But, yeah, and so that's a little bit of what, like, God's done in my life. If you have more questions or want to hear more, I'd love to share. Maybe like a little teaser. The rest of my family was, like, Mormon. My parents were kind of, like, agnostic, not really believers anymore because of, like, church hurt. But now that I knew about grace, I was like, oh, everyone's in for it. I was, like, calling my parents, talking to my siblings, telling all my friends. I was like, I don't care if you don't want to go to church. Come with me. I didn't want to go either. And then, yeah, by God's grace, yeah. Yeah, years later, just praying for my sisters, and they were pretty heartbroken when I told them I was Christian. They were like, why are you leaving the Mormon church? It's, like, the truth, our, like, communities here. And then they also, like, attended UC San Diego, and I invited them to church in Navs, and they wanted to do with neither of them. But I think it was, like, January or something of 2021, my middle sister, Melanie, was like, I'll go to church with you, like, it's easier for rides. I was like, okay. And then, yeah, by prayer and just time, yeah, the Lord revealed the gospel to her, and she's Christian. And then this year, actually, on August 2nd, my youngest sister calls me. I was in Virginia at the time. She's like, Valerie, I need to tell you something. Like, I haven't been telling you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, yeah, but, like, I think I'm Christian, and I don't know what to do about that. And so they're actually here with me this morning. Praise God. This is that. But yeah, just like the gospel and God's grace has just changed my life and my family's life, like so tragically, not tragically, but drastically. So yeah, that was probably longer than 5 minutes,
great.
But thanks,
That's great.
Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks, Val.
So here's a few things I want you to hear. I want you to hear that, you know, right now, and Stephen touched on this quite a bit, there is this idea that, oh man, the headlines say that the next generation is like, it's going to turn this nation from a Christian nation to an agnostic or an atheist one. But no, God is moving. God is moving maybe more than we realize. And even when we don't see it, he's working, right? Like that God is on the move. And I am confident that God is going to continue to change people's lives, that we're going to reach our 200th anniversary as a church because not of our efforts, because of the next generations. And let me connect this to you as well. For those of you who are financial partners, on the other side of your generosity, there are changed lives. And even when you don't always see it, he's working. God is on the move. And so, Stephen, one of the ways I want to kind of wrap this up a little bit is I want to pray for you. I want to pray for the Navigators. Why don't you tell us, how can we pray for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, thank you. And Tess and I would love to say thank you for your support over the years. Thank you for investing in this generation. Even though you may never get to see these students, you're changing lives, changing families, and sending people. It's been incredible to see that. I would say I would say some of it is perseverance. I think for young staff, in our work, we're all fully funded. We have to fundraise our full budget, our ministry budget, our salary, ministry expenses, all that. For young staff, that's really challenging. The Lord has been so kind to Tess and I. He has sustained us all 17 years. And we have young leaders coming up who really want to do this long term. As we all know, it's hard. It's just hard. It's hard living sometimes financially. And so I would say in some ways for our staff, for provision in that way. Another way is just more and more openness of students who want to walk with Jesus and want to give their lives away. We continue to ask the Lord to raise up more and more of a generation of people who would go and take this gospel wherever he would call them to. So I would say some of it is funding for young staff. I would say perseverance. It is more and more challenging going to the college campus and being with college students, not because of college students, but just campuses are making it harder. It's becoming it's just a little scary for some. And so funding, perseverance, and then just we long to see more and more mobilized just everywhere. We've been seeing every year students saying, hey, I'm graduating, I want to go overseas, I want to go into this workplace. But I would say in their 20s is probably the most challenging time for a believer. So post-college, if they're not connected with kind of a community of faith and disciple makers, that vision starts to really die off. And so those would be three things. Yeah, sorry, that was kind of scattered. But
no, it was good.
Yeah.
All right, if you would, join me in prayer. God, I'm praying right now for Stephen, for Tess, the Navigators ministry, what you're doing at UCSD, what you're doing at Cal State San Marcos, what you're doing at San Diego State. The God that you would give them your hand of favor and blessing. The God that you would provide the funding that is needed to the Navigators missionaries, to the organization itself, to see students find and follow you. God, I'm praying for perseverance, that when administrations or when just environments make it tough to get onto the campus and share their faith, that God, that you would make a way, that you would provide what is needed. God, I'm also praying for openness. That I'm praying that the students who hear the good news, the gospel, that God, that they would change them. That God, that you would do something inside of them, that your Holy Spirit would breathe life into their lives. And so God, we trust that you are the one who is orchestrating, that you are the one who is moving, that you are the one who has placed each and every person specifically where they are for the greatest opportunity and the greatest chance to meet you. And so God, we pray this in faith, knowing that you are a good God. I pray in your name, amen.